even if it is something you feel like you're passionate about, but it is outside of your zone of genius, it takes more time for you to deliver. And when it comes to the things that you actually are already, let's say, have an engagement with, that you know that you're good at, that you've done it over and over again, you start to push those things and they start to lose their quality. And realistically, like, I feel like yeses start to snowball. Right. So you may say yes to something that is a little bit out of your zone of genius, and then it stretches you. And then you say yes to, oh, we did something similar to this. Oh, yeah, we did something similar to this. And it just continues to stretch you until you're so far kind of out of scope that you start losing profitability.
Hey everyone, in today's episode, Darren and I will be talking about something that's deceptively simple, but actually truly incredibly powerful, and that's the word no. It's actually pretty easy to say yes, especially when you're trying to grow, you're trying to keep your team busy, you're trying to gain new clients, or help a client who's just asking for just one more thing, if you will. But within every single yes, there is a hidden cost. There is an actual built-in no for every single thing you say yes to. And so it either can pull you away from your zone of genius and stretch your team, needing to create new systems or stretch your systems in ways that are completely unsustainable. And that's built into the yeses that I see happen far too often. And so today we're going to dive into how learning to say no isn't just a productivity tool. It's how you can redefine the success within your agency and how constraints, clear, intentional ones, can unlock clarity, unlock greater margins, and ultimately help you create greater momentum. The thing I want us to first just start with is the idea of zone of genius. And frankly, the reality is that there's so many things that your agency likely is doing that is outside of your core zone of genius, things that you're currently doing that are outside of your core zone of genius. And there's a couple of implications of this, at least in my experience, is that when you're operating out of the thing that you enjoy doing, you're passionate about doing, you have a significant implication to your own energy. That delivery gets harder, it gets heavier, it gets more difficult for you to be able to do it. It gets harder for you to be able to show up to your clients and for your clients in the way that you need to. And frankly, you are doing something that you're not really great at or impassioned about. So you're going to do it in a lackluster fashion. So the client's experience is also lackluster as well. So you have less fun. It takes you longer because you're not excited and don't have the experience. And your clients don't enjoy it and get a lackluster experience. To me, I just don't see the upside.
Also, I mean, even if it is something you feel like you're passionate about, but it is outside of your zone of genius, it takes more time for you to deliver. And when it comes to the things that you actually are already, let's say, have an engagement with, that you know that you're good at, that you've done it over and over again, you start to push those things and they start to lose their quality. And realistically, like, I feel like yeses start to snowball. Right. So you may say yes to something that is a little bit out of your zone of genius, and then it stretches you. And then you say yes to, oh, we did something similar to this. Oh, yeah, we did something similar to this. And it just continues to stretch you until you're so far kind of out of scope that you start losing profitability. You start losing all the things that made your agency the great agency that you built your reputation upon. Right. And it stretches you with your past clients, and then your new clients don't get a tailored experience full time with you. Right. They don't get your
best
best
possible experience.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to think of the words.
I'm going to use an example that's actually very fitting for this podcast in the first place, in the fact that it actually stemmed from the podcast and something that I'm excited about. I'm a very, techie, nerdy person, and I was hearing just like a slight amount of reverb that maybe if you're listening to now, depending on how well the audio engineers do, you can hear a slight amount of echo in Darren's recording, whereas you don't hear that echo in mine. And the reason being is that I ended up spending a reasonable amount of time researching sound waves. I ended up buying a device to record noise claps going through the room and actually being able to figure out exactly where sound traps were happening in my room, and then installed sound dampeners, sound panels, all sorts of things all throughout my office to create for a better sound dampened room. Now, and the reason, the distinction of what I want to describe is the distinction between someone that has this zone of genius. I ended up having a friend come over that just to validate my idea of what it is that I wanted to do. He didn't look at any of the information that I collected, didn't look at the report that I did. He just went around the room clapping his hands to find the sound traps himself. And it's like, this is what you need to do. And actually changed some of the things that I was planning on doing. Some of them he validated, but he went to school for this. He understood exactly what he's doing here and knew how to actually properly sound dampen a room because it's something that he's educated about. And so it's not just to just really push down on what Darren is saying. It's this distinction of I'm impassioned by it because I'm a nerdy person and enjoy reading and exploring new ideas. But I spent 10, 15, 20, probably more hours trying to figure this out when my friend's hands, the level of technology necessary for him to do this, his hands, and was able to get a better result than I was able to do with hundreds of dollars of technology, reading books, and all of it. And so that's the distinction of what it is that you're talking about here. It's like, yeah, you can be passionate about it and excited about it, but reality is that experience is actually quite important. So at the beginning of the episode, I mentioned something. This was a very difficult kind of lesson for me to have learned, frankly, in that within every single yes that you say, there is an invisible no attached to it. There's only so many hours in a day. There's so much attention that you have. There's only so many decisions that you can make. There's only so many clients you can take on. There's only so much resources that every single one of us has. And so every single time you say yes, that means that you may be saying no to going to dinner with your spouse tonight. It might mean that you are saying no to showing up to this other thing. It may be that you are saying no to another client because you don't have any more resources to be able to bring on this person. And it might be a better fit client. And so every single time you say yes to something, there is a no involved because there's only so much available resources that we each have. So you could be saying no to margin. You could be saying no to ideal clients. You could be saying no to greater focus and more excitement and greater work that you're producing with the yeses that you have.
Yeah, exactly. And we just rationalize it in a lot of different ways, right? You said one of the things you said was like saying no to your ideal client, right? So if you say yes to a client because you're starving for revenue, like, okay, I'll just do this project for them. And then all of a sudden, a client that is your ideal client comes along and you just don't have time for them, right? That's you saying no to that ideal client that you had. I feel like there are a lot of things that trap us, right? That shiny object syndrome of like, I could just do this. If I could just do this. Like we make ourselves very kind of amenable to a lot of opportunities, but what we don't really realize is that saying yes to the wrong thing is just as damaging to your agency. I see it time and time again, just giving out your yeses too willy-nilly, right? You need to protect your time. You need to protect your energy. You need to protect the culture that you're building. You need to be very intentional when you are deciding on things that have a larger impact than what you see in front of you, right? Somebody said that one of the greatest questions, I think Warren Buffett said it, is this, and then what? Right. So it's like, if I say yes to this, and then what else is going to happen? Right. What else is the tail effect of my yes? So just being cognizant of that and then being able to understand how this plays into your overall vision for your agency. You don't want to be sidetracked and going down these different, side paths, side missions that ultimately don't move you forward towards your goal.
100%. I think that this idea of needing to figure it out, and when you don't really even know what it is, that, and then what next piece that is going to be necessary, is impossible for us to even know what that and then what is, because we don't have the experience to even figure that out or even know what's going to come up. So we may have been thoughtful in what we did know, but ultimately we don't know what we don't know. One of the other items that I was kind of introducing as a concept, and I am such a firm believer in the idea of constraints for so many reasons. One, because I believe the thoughtful version of myself is generally a better version of myself. And when I'm in the midst of something, then I can make more brass decisions, depending on the scenario, obviously. There's also Parkinson's law, and I can succumb myself to it just the same like every other person is that we, as human beings, will utilize whatever available resources that we have. So constraints are just so incredibly important. And with any direction that I ultimately take in business or in life, I'm putting, in even some instances, kind of fake constraints around it, even to this device that I've recently been getting, and Darren also got one too. This
Love it.
device called a brick. It's great, right?
It is great.
And how you can just like create a constraint with, all right, I'm going to go spend time with family, or I'm going to go do X, Y, Z. And now your phone is completely blocked and locked to all the things that you don't want to have access to. And that's a limitation. That is a constraint. A constraint can be the amount of hours that you're going to work. The constraint can be the type of work you're going to take on. The constraint can be, to the point that, and this at one point, and I recovering workaholic, to the point that I had gone into and had IT go into my home Wi-Fi and specifically block IP addresses that wouldn't allow emails to load, would not allow for me to log into project management softwares, that would prevent me from my home to be able to do so. And this was pre-COVID era, obviously, because now with the work home environment, it's a bit different. But being able to create these limitations around yourself, because it's just so important to understand when you're in the moment of making a choice, and you want to be able to have a distinction of what success and failure ultimately means, and those constraints can create them. It's like the idea that if I were to want to grow my business to $50 million, let's say, right? But what if I didn't actually have a constraint around the profitability of that? And so let's say that I didn't consider profitability and I had zero profit or even was losing money. And there's reasons in the tech sector that you often see people losing money for a long time, but not generally in a service-based business. That limitation is vital, that I have to do this, but with a certain amount of profit. Otherwise, there's not really a point to it. So what is the constraint? Well, how does that goal actually fully defined, allowing for you to understand what it is and ultimately make better decisions?
For me and for the agencies I've seen, one of the hardest constraints to make is time. Understanding the value of your time. So just accepting everything, filling up your calendar. Like, well, first and foremost, have a calendar that shows you what time you have available. So it's easier for you to then make these decisions, right? A lot of, even in my own personal life, of me accepting too much is because I have not looked at how much time this actually is going to take or how much of an impact this is going to take, and it bleeds into different areas of my life, right? So being able to say no based off of, yeah, hey, I don't have enough time for that, and just being able to see it physically is like, hey, like this is going to take me 10 hours to do this project. I only have 5 hours. I don't want to under deliver for you. Like this gives me or substantiates my reasoning within myself for me just to be able to say no, right? Mm-hmm. Or like there's this kind of pie in the sky dream I have, or I want to forecast out how long. It's like, okay, let me actually be realistic for this. What is it going to take to get there? Like, how can I break this up into reasonable chunks, or how can I make sure that I am being realistic with where I'm at and where I'm looking to go, right? So just having that ability to rationalize it to yourself, whether it be through, just kind of having a visual aid such as your calendar, or even just having it filtered through somebody else, right? So you have an EA, your EA, you're like, hey, these are the set of constraints that I want to, these are the people I want to work with. These are the type of people I want to work with. So it doesn't even reach to you because it gets filtered through somebody else who's looking at it with those eyes and with those lenses for those constraints, right? So just different things that could be set up, or different systems and processes that can be set up in the initial that, kind of removes you from even not having to say no, but it pre-says no for you is what I'm saying. Like it has that filter before it even gets to you.
Yeah, I generally agree. The other thing that I think is quite important here is the framework for saying it, because the reality is that, at least in my experience, is that there's so much emotionality to it. And what Darren's kind of suggesting here and is suggesting here is that without that constraint, without that understanding, is that you end up feeling like maybe you're going to disappoint the person. Maybe you feel like you're leaving money on the table. Maybe you feel like you're going to lose out on work. And maybe you're even fearful of disappointing yourself. And that emotional side of saying no can actually really, truly color the decision that you end up making. And without having clear boundaries, a framework by which to make these choices, it makes it very difficult. At least in my experience, it's made it very difficult. And frankly, I think that the distinction, apparently since we are quoting Warren Buffett at the moment, one of the things that he said at one point, I'm going to butcher the actual quote of him, the same way that Darren did, apparently it's a theme today. And it was something along the lines of, my successes have actually been built more by my no's than my yeses. And it's important to understand that actually saying no is a greater sign of leadership. It's not failure. That the no and understanding the place and the zone that you're supposed to be in, the place that you're supposed to live, the lane that you are intended to be in, knowing that clearly and knowing it clearly enough to feel empowered to say the no actually shows that you are truly a leader and that you're able to understand where you begin and where you end and where you shouldn't be. And, to me, one of the things that I find to be really useful here is understanding that larger objective, that larger vision, that larger goal, whether it's the 12-month goal, 3-year goal, 10-year goal, but understanding what that actually looks like. And if it's not going to actually further it, it's not going to walk you closer to it, then it makes the answer of no a lot easier and a lot simpler.
Yeah, I think that you kind of hit the nail on the head there. It is that emotionality sometimes that comes through when you have to say no to somebody, right? Because I think it's just we've been on the other side of rejection, quote unquote, right? But I mean, once you have that reason, once you have that framework for it, it makes it easier realistically, right? Just, and it helps you with your focus, right? Just understanding like, hey, this is what we're focusing on, and also kind of rededicates you to what your overall goal is. So I know, I mean, something that people all can relate to is their weight loss journey, right? I can't eat pizza right now because I'm looking to lose X amount of pounds or whatever it may be, right? And it also just kind of emboldens you. It's like, hey, you know what? I said no to pizza 15 times last week. I know that I'm not going to stop until I actually reach that goal, right? So it gives you that boost that you need as well sometimes. Say
I might
when you say no.
accidentally order some pizza to Darren's house right now.
Please don't. I have a trip coming up.
So along that same kind of idea that we're talking about too, that Darren said, it's like we've been on the other side of rejection, which I think is a really astute call out. And following the same analogy that Darren, or the situation that Darren finds himself right now with on his weight loss journey, is that it actually doesn't make pizza any less delicious because he can't eat it right now either. And so the same thing is true for the person. It doesn't make their goal, it doesn't make their request, it doesn't make their ask any less right. It just means that right now is not the time for you. And so you can communicate it to them in a way that actually doesn't feel like rejection, and you can point them in the right direction. It's like, I'm really honored that you reached out to ask to see if we can help you with this. It really means a lot that you entrust us with these types of things. Frankly, I want to make sure that I really allow and really honor that trust by letting you know that this just isn't the best fit for us. But I do know someone that actually might really be able to help you do this really well, that this is their zone of genius. And I'm going to point you in the right direction of someone that is going to do this project justice for you. And making sure that you're doing it in a way that is respectful, that is honoring the person's acknowledgement and trust in you, and being able to push them and show them the right direction to go. The final thing that I thought would really be useful here is the reframe and mindset shift that I think is going to be necessary for anyone listening that does struggle with saying no, and that's redefining success for you on your own terms. The reality is, and this is going to sound semi-narcissistic, I suppose, in that your life is yours. Your business is yours. Your success is yours. And whatever that yes or no is for you, whatever that no needs to be, so that you have the space and the time for the yeses that you need, what that success is on your terms, that you only get this one life. It's not anyone else's. And sure, you have family members and things like that you have a bit more of a draw to, presumably, but at least in the context of what I'm talking about today, your business, your agency, you don't owe anyone anything. You can define success on your terms. This is your business. This is your agency, so that you can have the space for the greater amount of revenue that you want, the greater amount of margins that you want, the more time that you want, the greater alignment, the more excitement, the better work, the larger clients, the right fit clients, whatever that is. But this is your business. This is your life that you get to choose. You get to do it exactly as you want. And don't let me or anyone else tell you any different.
I'm pretty sure I'm just going to reiterate what you said. You hit the nail on the head there, right? I mean, you're the only person you have to live with. So why not make yourself happy and understand that, you don't owe anybody your time, and that you're going to be ultimately the person who has to make the decision. So take it upon yourself to realize that it is okay to say no. Once you get to that point where you're saying no just to say no and you can live with it, I think you're going to be golden.
Agreed. I would say that saying no is one of the most powerful decisions that you can actually make as a business owner and agency leader. It protects you, it protects your team, it sharpens your strategy, sharpens your direction, and creates room for the right opportunities to be able to show up and for you to be able to take advantage of them. If you've ever been in a place where you feel like you've been stretched too thin, scattered across too many types of work or clients, this might be a sign for you that you need to draw a line. You need to gain greater clarity and ultimately say no.